This podcast is brought to you by the Spur of the Moment podcast.
As far back as I can remember, I have wanted to be an entrepreneur. Now, I am here to guide you through the intricate paths of building your business, embracing emerging technologies, and navigating the startup world. I am Saul, and this is Startup Corps, your go-to podcast for entrepreneurial insights and tech-driven success. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Startup Corps. Today we have an amazing guest, Glenn Cook. I'm a little bit biased towards him. He's a big fan of electric aviation, electric cars, everything about mobility. He's actually an entrepreneur, awarded as entrepreneur and innovator of the year. So please, Glenn, introduce yourself.
Well, my name is Glenn Cook. I am a founder, CEO of SafeRydr. We've been doing multimodal systems now for the last 20 plus years. I've been in the EV space, autonomous vehicle space, and now over the last few years, I've been working in the electric vehicle takeoff and landing space. I work with Future Cities here in Lake Nona. Also, I've been a guest speaker in the intelligent transportation sector in Dubai, and I work with multiple agencies as well as countries when it comes to Future City.
Fantastic. So, Glenn, what makes you start into this journey of innovation, technologies? Please tell us about that.
Well, I'd say probably about 16 years ago, I did an exit, 2008. With a little company that was called Varsity Brands that was owned by ESPN. And I didn't do anything for a few years. And then I looked down on a P&L statement and I saw transportation. And I said, well, I could kind of do that. And I did that here in the city of Orlando. And we got into being on the board of directors for the Motor Coach Association, the Limousine Association. I started working with Future Cities in Avalon. I started working in the villages. And the next thing you know, I had a gentleman walk into my office from Jamaica about 6 years ago. His name was Mark Reed. He had started a company that was an autonomous vehicle company. And he said, hey, wouldn't it be great if I could put my autonomous vehicles on your golf cart lanes here in the villages? And I said, that's a really great idea. And the next thing you know, I looked down and I said to the people that owned the villages at the time, I said, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm going with him. So the next thing, we were working with Tesla, and I worked with Dr. David Metcalf. Our wives actually went to high school together. And he was working on a Tesla project at the time at the University of Central Florida, and so was I. I got introduced to him and his Institute of Simulation and Training. And lo and behold, over the course of the next 6 years, I ended up in Lake Nona. And I've been doing that ever since, working with Global Blockchain Ventures, Tavistock brand. Most recently been working on my own projects with vertical takeoff and landing. And now we are bringing that to our market segment here just south of the airport.
Fantastic. Glenn, take us a little bit back on the time on that exit that you did. What was the company about? How was a little bit about the process and how you got acquired? What was the deal there? You sold it? How was the exit?
Well, when I got out of college, I had to do a master's degree thesis, and it was built around safety. And I started a production business that dealt with gymnastics, cheerleading, acrobatic safety. And next thing you know, I started producing events, and I produced those events with the theme parks down here in Orlando. So it was SeaWorld, Walt Disney World, Universal. And I started also producing events with the NBA. So the Orlando Magic, Chicago Bulls, Portland Trail Blazers. And as I started doing these events, they became kind of viral. So these companies that would come to us would do a event production, anything that could sell mass ticket sales for their theme park or the NBA. So when they had a down season, they would come to us and we would produce these events. As we would produce these events, we would get mass ticket sales of over 1,000 plus, and it became an actual business. And after probably about, I'd say 15 years in that industry, we got approached by a brand that was called Varsity Brands that did the National Cheerleading Championships with ESPN, and they acquired us. Our brand, which was called Spirit Cheer, and Infinity Brand. So Infinity Brand was the apparel side, and Spirit Cheer was the actual event production side with the cheerleading industry. So once that was done, I didn't do anything for a couple of years. And my wife said that was pretty unhealthy to sit on the couch and not do anything.
If it's not secret, do you mind to share some numbers? How much was that deal or something that
It was
encouraged
basic M&A
startups to?
acquisition, where
Mhm.
we were required to service the account, produce those events again for the next couple of years. The numbers was well into the millions, but
Mhm.
we're not allowed to disclose exactly what the deal was about. But there was multiple deals in there with the apparel, the event production, with the NBA, with the theme parks. So they subdivided it out and broke it out into every individual contract was actually what was acquired. And throughout the years, my business partners at the time went on to do their own things within those given industries. And I decided that I would get into transportation.
Very good. So what do you think you owe the success of that company?
I would probably say that my partners were very pivotal and strategic in alignment of that. We had to get some venture capital money uh, earlier on, which made the deals happen. And that was one of my main business partners at the time was the CEO. I was the COO. He was very strategic in that. We also, this was back before China became kind of a bad word in manufacturing.
Mhm.
So we were able to produce apparel. We got patents on certain types of shoes at the time, which made it the valuation go up. So I would say patenting would played a strategic role in that. And then over the course of probably about 15 years, like I said, we built the brand. And the brand was actually sold in during that time period. Also, the United States was going through a downturn in 2008. We thought it would be appropriate time to do an exit, so we did, and took a couple of years off.
Fantastic. So why don't you tell us a little bit about SafeRydr and all this brand that you've been pitching for a little while, and now all governments know who you are, know about your brand, know what you do. Please tell us.
Well, that kind of started with a transportation company out of the limousine industry. We were moving people with electric and semi-autonomous vehicles with Tesla back when Tesla had just come out with autopilot. So we had created a system where Uber or Lyft or GroundLink or Get Transferred or Black Lane at the time in Europe could actually send us an order, and our vehicles actually acted as a ECU. So it would accept the orders. The driver, all they had to do was touch the screen, accept it, and produce the drive with a passenger in the vehicle. And then we had another system, which was called Quiz My Ride, where Alexa would ask the passenger what they thought about electric semi-autonomous vehicles, if they felt safe and secure. And as the driver operator was mandated to actually monitor the system, so it could do an intervention should the AI make a bad choice. The people that were the passengers could respond. And as we executed these drives, it was a self-funding study. So Uber and Lyft and GroundLink and at the time, they would fund us and would go straight into the bank account. And then the College of Engineering from the University of Central Florida looked at us and said, wow, how are you doing this? It was kind of a white label that we came up with, but literally the vehicle became our operational bank mobility device, as well as our mobile computer, kind of like an iPhone.
So spell out ESUECU, please. You mentioned it before, so that everybody knows what this is.
Okay, it's basically the MCU of the vehicle is kind of like the computer chip that's inside a Tesla. And so your mainframe, or wherever you see the tablet in the center, is the brains of the vehicle, which is a touch screen. And you could touch that and it would give out your dispatch screen. It could allow you to accept through the emails that would come in, or the orders that would come in through the cloud system. The driver could connect it, accept it, and it would pump in the order that people would fly into the airports or be on the curb over International Drive or any of the theme parks. And they would execute that form of mobility, transfer the passenger from point A to point B. And then once they got out, they would close out the deal, and then immediately would get paid.
Fantastic. So, Glenn, from what I can see, you've been developing like an umbrella company, which is this. What do you have under this umbrella? And how would you welcome a startup or entrepreneurs or big companies that are looking to innovate?
Well, I would tell you that I was kind of preceded by some greatness. About 6 years ago, we got into what was called ICOR at the University of Central Florida. And we had a company at the time, it was called EV Transports, where we were transporting passengers utilizing the Uber Lyft applications at the time. And they came to us and said, you know what, we really think that you need to start working on your brand management. And so we took a part of the ICOR program. We had some wonderful mentors that had, 40 plus patents in the space. And it was about 8 different companies of entrepreneurs that got together to grow their new startup brand. And we selected at the time SafeRydr. And the reason why is because the thing that we kept seeing reoccurring through our customer discovery is that people wanted to make sure that their vehicles, their mobility devices, were safe and secure, that we're having wrecks. We were seeing an influx at the time of insurance rates going up. And so if we could figure out a safe brand, SafeRydr, we could start optimizing that for any modal system. And that's when multimodal systems became very popular. So for land, air, water, or space, people wanted to know how are they going to move from point A to point B. So through customer discovery, we came up with the brand SafeRydr. And so SafeRydr actually had to be created as a EIN number under the DBA of EV Transports. And the brand became more popular than the actual execution of the rides or the hardware, because hardware is very hard and very expensive. So creating the brand and the software was less expensive, and it was also easier to scale.
So, Glenn, tell us what are you looking for at the moment? What excites you? What are you working right now?
Well, right now we've also been working with different types of software that come through multimodal systems. We probably work with about 8 different verticals in the mobility space. But because we're here in Lake Nona, we live very close proximity to our airport. And because of that, people come out of the south side of that airport, which is the new Terminal C International, and they'll either take a right turn on 417 to go towards Disney, or they'll take a left turn to Lake Nona, which is known as a future city. And by doing that, they come and visit us. They bring entire countries here. They'll come to our incubators, which would either be GuideWell or the Verizon 5G Center leads. And they will bring entire missions through here to look at whatever business they might be working on. We work with about 17 different verticals now. And as a guide or a mentor with these startup companies, I look at them because I've been here for over 30 years in this particular environment. And I say, what do you want to create? And by being here and knowing our state legislators and knowing the people that work in these industries, I kind of connect the dots for them. And with that, I can get, fees charged to them, which could be retainers, or they can also have success fees built into KPIs, which are key performance indicators. And by doing that, we align companies to build their dream, whatever it is. And it could be in healthcare, it could be in fintech, it could be in AI, it could be in mobility. But the goal is to make people's dreams become a reality. And so as I've kind of pivoted away from the event industry into the apparel industry and into the mobility industry, now I'm more into the private sector of creating future cities, just because I've done it with Lake Mary, I've done it with Avalon, I've done it with the villages, and now I'm here in Lake Nona, soon to be Sunbridge.
All right. So, Glenn, I believe you are one of the biggest ambassadors of Lake Nona, which is a neighborhood. It's a small city, is part of Orlando or attached to Orlando. Tell me.
Yeah,
Tell us a
basically
little bit about
Orlando resides out of the southeastern quadrant of the airport. It's 17 and a half square miles of living lab space is the best way I can explain it. And the Tavistock brand is the land developer out here. And I kind of tongue in cheek say they give me enough rope to hang myself with, because we get a chance to try and fail a lot. And entrepreneurs and startups should never be afraid of failing. It's not really failing, it's learning. You learn when it doesn't work, and you just pivot to the next thing, the next thing that might be successful. And you learn through a customer discovery or a time spent in that specific genre or whatever it is to give your dream an opportunity to thrive. And it's okay if things don't work. Thomas Edison, I didn't find 10,000 ways of failure. I just found 10,000 ways it didn't work, and I just tweaked a little bit. So that's the key. Keep moving on, keep pressing on. I work in one of my accelerators here in the Verizon 5G Leads Lab, and I work with Spartan Brands. The CEO of that corporation is Joe DeSena. He has a theory, and it's called fire, ready, aim. And it means you just go after it, and you'll figure it out along the way.
Love this. So what you were describing is the scientific method, which I'm very passionate about, is how we discover new technologies, new biological things, vaccines, from things on the ground all the way to things on space. So scientific method is pretty important in our lives, whether we understand it or not. I love this. So on the entrepreneurship that you started, when you see startups that you like, what would you be able to tell them about your services, what you actually can do, how you add value to them?
Well, the main thing is getting them in front of the right people. Everybody's going to have a different dream, and to know who those people are that are well connected, have an opportunity to raise capital, to allow them to do their own pitch, to do their own creation is the key. I tell you what, one of the things that I really have enjoyed meeting you, Saul, is in EJet, learning about fluid dynamics, learning about cold jet propulsion. These are things that I've never even thought about, but these are type of propulsion systems that can have multifacets, and not just eVTOLs, but potentially in the HVAC space, potentially in the healthcare space. And these are things that I would love to see, to explore with you, because I believe that the startup that you have with EJet has great potential.
So today's episode is sponsored by the Spur of the Moment podcast, everybody. Come join us every Saturday. We're going to do this. We're going to sit here. We're going to talk about the news. Time to talk about the Minecraft.
Okay.
It looks bad. So we're going to talk about movies. That new Joker movie is apparently terrible, and I want to see it so badly because I hear it's awful. We're going to make some jokes. We're going to have some laughs.
There's a lot of funny jokes in there. There's a lot of weird jokes in there. The Channing Tatum one will always make me laugh. Especially when you hear the behind the scenes stuff, like when you hear the behind the scenes story of how they just phoned them up.
We're occasionally going to have other people along for the ride.
A really fun fact though is I learned last year that that Coraline was Leica and not Disney.
Oh, interesting. I mean, I can see why you would make that mistake. Yeah. Because it does seem like it's a different. And to be fair,
that would be a horrifying, terrible Disney movie.
It would be because yeah. And we're just gonna have a generally good time. George, do you have anything else you want to say about our podcast? Make people watch it.
We watch movies. Sometimes we watch shows, but we always have fun.
Here
on the spur. 3, 2, 1. On the spur of the podcast moment.
Yeah, we nailed it. Nailed it. Podcast. Yeah. It's Spur of the Moment podcast every Saturday. We nailed it.
You can expect awesome content like that.
We cut flawless promos every single week.
Glenn, so what is the key aspect? So government support, and you mentioned it a couple of times. So government support is very important for the startups that we are disrupting a few things. What do you think is the support that the people that you know in the government are trying to help, how they can add value? Are they open? Are they closed? Are they supportive? Are they afraid? What's the deal there?
Well, we just had a new changing of the guard, so to speak, with our last election. So a little bit's yet to be seen. But with our personal government in the United States, we have a lot of departments: Department of Transportation, Department of Energy, Department of Defense. And with every one of those segments, it has their own leadership. And getting to know that leadership and what their own value structures are takes time. So developing relationships is very key in the United States. Now then, I would also say when I deal in the international based market, I have to learn cultures. You know, a culture in Israel is not the same as the culture that is in Brazil, not the same culture that is in the UK or Europe. I worked with a gentleman this year from Czechoslovakia. Very interesting story. This man was going into the Ukrainian war, and he was extracting refugees at a Kiev in a minivan. And I was like, man, that is so unsafe. So I happened to have a Cybertruck on order from 5 years ago, and I allowed him to utilize that reservation number under EV Transports. We got some investors together. We got some people that would invest in actually getting that vehicle on an airplane over to Luxembourg, and then he drove it down to Prague.
Wow.
Took about 5.5 years to do this, but I met this gentleman back in January, and we finally got it sent over to him in May of this 2024 year.
What was the serial number of that Cybertruck?
That was about 107 all in.
Wow, 3 digits.
Plus the airfare over there, another 20 grand out of Atlanta to Luxembourg. But, you know, it was all funded through the, you know, really it was a gift in kind is what it was. You know, we saw a need, and people got together and found that there was value in that. And if you could develop one of the most resilient pieces of equipment, more like a sports car, had the equivalency of about 8 power walls built into it. So should somebody lose power, you could plug into it, 220, 110. It's a mobility thing. It could go 0 to 60 in less than 3 seconds. Off-road, you could change the suspension on this thing. You can beat it with a hammer, shoot it with a gun. And you could stand on the back of it, you know, so it was very secure. And that Norton was his name, and Norton Igor Tesla, ironically.
Wow.
But he lives in Czechoslovakia. Brought a whole team of people over here. They stayed over at the port, and got a chance to go see rocket launches with them, bring them into Lake Nona. They got a chance to experience AutoCycle, which is a new legislation that we created in 2021. That around that became manufacturing, how you would optimize sustainable manufacturing. 2/3 less the materials, 2/3 less the costs. If you don't have to build as big of roads, you don't have to maintain the bigger roads. Cost efficiency.
Infrastructure, that's very important now. We have a big bill about that in here in the US. So Glenn, from all the different government agencies that you know of, which ones do you feel you are closer, and which ones are willing to help startups?
Most recently, I've been working very closely with our Tech Grove over at the University of Central Florida, and that is basically a Department of Defense. And they have a new unit over there that kind of expedites startup ideas. It's called the DIU, and it's Defense Innovation
Unit.
Yes, sir.
I applied for them. I applied to them, yeah.
And what I'm finding is what used to maybe take, 18 months is being expedited to 60 and 90 days and procurement. So, but, just like anything else, you got to have something that strikes their attention, and you get interviewed, and it's a long process. But once you're in, you get that SAM's number, you get to be a part of that procurement process, and it gets expedited relatively efficiently. And I've found them, the DOD and our Department of Energy, the DOE, to be very helpful to a lot of startups right now, because they want to stay ahead of the curve. And I will also tell you that AI is playing a very significant role in how fast things are evolving right now. They can process things significantly more efficiently, and it can be expedited. I would also say, working with some larger firms like IBM, I've had a lot of interaction with them in the private sector, and Watson X AI. And that's just my own personal experience. There are many other great companies out there, working some with Amazon, over at the Kennedy Space Center, Blue Origin. They're looking at decommissioning the space station and creating a new space economy. So they're looking at a thing called orbital reef now. What's it like when you develop an actual space station out there? People live in space and then they visit Earth. That's an entire thing that we're working on for Vision 2055 now, with a bunch of great thought leaders.
Fantastic. Talking about, you recently did a trip to Dubai.
Yes, sir.
Tell us a little bit about the experience. You said that you really need to learn about cultures if you manage to meet some Emiratis, what you say? Well, because I know there's a few secrets there, but what was that about? Tell us a little bit what value brought to your life.
Well, I had a gentleman. It's one of my mentors. His name is Mr. Bob McQueen. He's a Scotsman. Happened to work in the state of Florida as one of the CTOs of the Florida Turnpike, and he and his wife went over and opened up a Christian mission over in Race, France. Well, Mr. McQueen reached out to me and said, "Hey, Glenn, we're going to be doing the ITS World Congress in Dubai this year. Would you mind being a guest speaker on AR, VR, simulation training?" I said, "Absolutely, Bob. I'd love to do that." Well, what I wasn't prepared for, number one, was the flight. That was 15 hours nonstop on Emirates. Thank God it was comfortable, but you got to get up and move around. And then the other thing I found out when I got there is I was going to be on a speaking panel with Miss Nora. And Miss Nora was in charge of all transportational assets for the Emiratis. Wow. I mean, one of the highest ranking officials for their assets over there. And she sat on the panel right beside me. And the first thing I did when I sat down was, "Pleased to meet you, Nora." And I stuck up my hand and shake her hand. Come to find out, that's a big no-no in that culture. I felt terrible. But she was a wonderful person, very intelligent. And but that was one of the culture shocks that I got right away, was being on that panel with her and learning that men don't shake women's hands in Dubai.
That's right. Haram is forbidden.
Yes.
Haram is in Arabic.
So, but I learned that, and just like other cultures, you know, in the Israeli culture, I didn't know until later on, after working with the IDF, which is the Israeli Defense Force, that men and women are required to go into the military in Israel, which was a big culture shock here in the United States, because, you know, we've heard in the past that men get drafted into the military, and in our culture, that's totally acceptable. But in Israel, it's men and women. And Israel's not very big. We're talking about the size maybe of New Jersey. And so after getting to learn and meet some of these people in the IDF, where everybody's been through it, these people are in their 40s and 50s that I deal with, and they have kids now that are going into the military. And not only are they going into the military, they're going into a war zone. So that's stressful to their parents, as well as already being in the reserves. So if you're above, 28, you go into the reserves, and the next thing you know, you get called back into a war, and you might have kids. You might have siblings that are being called in from the reserve. An entire, what they call a kibbutz over there, or a city, gets pulled back into the military to defend their country, which is a very honorable thing. Don't get me wrong, but it's just the idea of the stress factor that goes on to be a parent, then go back in the military, and then possibly even have some of your kids in the military with you.
Yeah, that's very critical situation there. So Glenn, tell us if there are companies out there that they are kind of opening their eyes to innovation. Maybe they are not so innovative, but they've been doing great results for the last years, but now they need to pivot and adapt to things like, oh, I cannot manufacture in China anymore. Now I have to do it in here. So what will be the kind of services that you will be able to bring to these companies that, number one, might need to relocate some people, might need to relocate infrastructure, services, manufacturing, even executives?
Mm-hmm.
What else do you think these companies will like to hear from you? What they don't know about you?
Well, you might be able to share with them our website, www.safrydr.com, SafeRydr.com.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go there, just scroll to the bottom, put in your name, your number, your email address, and what you're interested in. Reach out to me. I always take time to speak to everybody that comes in through our website. We have a nice incubator here, and if I'm not able to answer those questions, we do have the Tavistock brand. We also have organization here through Leeds that has their own VC group here. It's called M2. And then also we work with a professional organization, or a couple of them actually. One of them is in South Florida at Ventura. It's called CICL, which is the commercialization of innovation. And we bring in companies once a week to be able to give their pitch. And it could be from anywhere in the world. I would say that a lot of the companies do come through Israel, but there's great brains everywhere in the world. I'm finding smart people, in Czechoslovakia. I'm finding smart people in Europe. I'm finding some people in Brazil, Singapore. And it really, the main thing, they bring it through here. It comes across the incubator desk. We evaluate it. We allow them an opportunity to speak in front of a group of thought leaders in a lot of different verticals. Like I said, about 17 different verticals, and give their pitch. They get an hour, and we do it once a week. They can reach out to me, and we can get them inside that circuit. I can't say it's going to be the very next week, but they get inside our schedule. Could be 4 to 6 weeks out, and they have an opportunity to do an online pitch. If it's worthy, then I will bring it to some of those corporation heads in any of those countries where they might be interested in relocating to.
Fantastic. Very good value for everybody, honestly. Glenn, now, let's talk about eVTOLs.
Yes, sir.
So, a couple of things happened a couple of weeks back. We're in November 10 today. So FAA launched a new regulation to how to train multi-copter pilots, which are eVTOLs, most of the eVTOLs at this point. And the other thing that happened is Lilium is out.
Right. They had insolvency is what they called it.
Yes. So please tell us, what are your thoughts about this industry? What you strive for? Because you've been incredibly connected with eVTOLs, drone kind of thing, aircrafts. So please tell us your thoughts.
Well, first off, let me say that I am not, I'm agnostic when it comes to eVTOLs. There are some that I have really favored. However, with Lilium, it was one of the ones that the Tavistock brand is in full support of. They were even looking at creating the very first vertiport in the state of Florida, just southwest of the airport. And by doing that, they were going to be allowing Lilium to come in. It was a German company. One of the main innovators for that company is Matt Brofman. He was taken out of the city of Orlando as one of the chief innovators at the time. And he's a brilliant man. But however, I guess Lilium fell on some financial struggles, and they were said to be insolvent. However, they did make a commitment to the Saudi Arabian country of delivering 50 of these eVTOLs and probably doing some type of restructuring with the technology, the IP of the eVTOL company. With that, I've also seen other one-seater, two-seater type eVTOLs pop up that would allow for human transport. And because the ADAS systems, which is basically kind of like a self-driving type system or an autonomous system that's very safe, allows these eVTOLs to take off and land on their own, where the pilot or the person, the occupant, doesn't actually have to fly. So that does not require a pilot's license. The vehicles give a code. It elevates to a certain threshold, which is usually in a drone space, so to speak. So it has an actual air ceiling to it, so it doesn't interfere with jets. And it can be maneuverable within the basically the flight time of whenever the battery will last. And those people can go up there, they can observe, they can spin it around, they can move the vehicle, but they also have a ground support system on the ground that makes sure they're safe and secure. So it's giving people the experience of urban air mobility.
The true experience, because actually, if you pay a little bit of money, there was an opportunity in Orlando to fly one of those, right?
Yeah, recurring revenue stream. There was one recently that was brought in actually to Lakeland. It was called Lyft, and I'm familiar with the people that brought that in there. Mm-hmm. But I think for about $350, anybody could sign up for it, get in, they get a quick tutorial, and it lifts. It was done in a regional airport in Lakeland, and people got the experience. And I do know they're out of Austin. Yeah, they're out of Austin, Texas. There's some certain things that I can't discuss about it, but it's a wonderful thing to get people. It's a multi-copter, but what we call the flying Ginsu knives or rotary blades are actually above the head, so it's much safer. Some of the other ones that I've seen that would never, I think, be this personal opinion, be accepted by the FAA are things like the Jetson One, the E-Hang, some stuff like that, because they're lower to the ground about leg level. Would be in my perspective, more open and potentially dangerous to children or animals, that type of thing. And I do not believe the FAA would ever literally let that get off the ground here in the United States.
Yeah, especially because the EHang is Chinese. They not even let the small drones like DJI and stuff flying anymore.
Yes, sir. Correct.
Glenn, this has been amazing. And do you have any final thoughts?
Saul, I want to work with you.
Sure. Glenn, tell us where we can find you.
Well, you can find me right here in Lake Nona, corner of Tavistock Lakes Boulevard and Lake Nona Boulevard. Our website is www.SafeRydr.com. And you can go there, drop us a line. Please feel free, roam around a little bit. We also have opportunities that we work with humanitarian need. So anything that has to do with something for the common good. But my main thing is, how do we do good in life? This is our vessel that the good Lord has given us, and we want to make sure that our lives are safe and secure. I'm a grandfather, I'm a father, and I'm a husband, and I have parents, and I want to make sure that this world is going to be a better place to be when I leave it.
That's what we are about. Great humans working together for innovation and a better world of the world. Fantastic. Amen. Glenn, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Saul. Grace and peace, my friend.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
For all the listeners, please follow us. Our podcast is in YouTube and every single podcast outlet that is out there is Startup Corps. My name is Saul Tarazona. Looking forward to see you in the next one. Thank you.
Thank you, Saul.